Dr. Sage here. Today starts the first of 4 videos where I'm going to discuss metabolism, energy, and enzymes. You've probably heard that term before, metabolism. Like you've heard people refer to like your metabolism. Now what metabolism really means is all of the chemical reactions that are happening inside your cells. Now your cells are doing lots of chemical reactions, literally millions every single second. And they're doing them very quickly. Let's say they have chemical A and they want to turn into chemical D. They don't do it in one step. They don't do it in one chemical reaction. Instead, what they do is they take chemical A and then they use an enzyme, let's say enzyme number 1, to turn chemical A into chemical B. Now today we're going to learn what enzymes are, but as a preview, enzymes are proteins that are a catalyst. In other words, they speed up a chemical reaction. So enzyme 1 turns chemical A into chemical B. Then a different enzyme, enzyme 2, will take chemical B and turn it into chemical C. Then yet another enzyme, enzyme 3, will take chemical C and turn it into chemical D. So they don't do it in one step, they do it in a series of small steps, each one catalyzed or sped up by a different enzyme. That's called a metabolic pathway, and that's how your cells actually do their chemical reactions. Now, with chemical reactions, there are 2 broad categories. Those are called catabolic reactions and anabolic reactions. Catabolic reactions are where you take a large complex molecule and you break it down into smaller molecules. For example, you take glucose, a molecule that's built out of 6 carbons, and you break it down into 6 separate molecules of carbon dioxide, where each one only has 1 carbon. So since you're taking a large complex organic molecule, breaking it down into smaller molecules, that's a catabolic reaction. The other thing to note about catabolic reactions is they release energy. So catabolic reactions break down molecules and they're going to be releasing energy. An example of a catabolic reaction is aerobic cellular respiration. We're going to learn about that in our next series of lectures. But in brief, aerobic cellular respiration happens using the mitochondria inside your cells. Your mitochondria break down glucose into carbon dioxide, releasing its energy. And the mitochondria are going to capture that energy to charge up a battery called ATP. But we'll get to that detail in a later chapter. The other type of reaction is called an anabolic reaction. An anabolic reaction would be the opposite of a catabolic. An anabolic is where you take small molecules and build them up into bigger molecules. For example, you take carbon dioxide that only has 1 carbon and you build it up into glucose that has 6 carbons. So since you're building it up, that's an anabolic reaction. Now, since you're building something up, it's also going to require energy. It's going to take in energy. So, catabolic reactions break down molecules into smaller molecules and they release energy. Anabolic reactions build up molecules into bigger molecules and they consume or take in energy. An example of an anabolic reaction is photosynthesis, which you're going to learn about after you learn about aerobic cellular respiration. Photosynthesis is something that plants can do. In, again, brief summary, using their chloroplasts, they take carbon dioxide, a small simple molecule, and then using the energy from sunlight, they build that up into a large complex molecule that would be glucose. So, catabolic breaks down, releases energy. Anabolic builds up, consumes energy. So, since we're going to be talking a lot about energy in this chapter and the next couple chapters, we need to learn what energy actually is, because energy is not just like electricity coming out of the outlet. Technically, energy is the capacity to cause change or the ability to do work. That's what energy is. And there's lots of different types of energy. So electrical energy is one type of energy. Light energy is another type of energy. There's lots of different types of energy. Now, referring to energy, we talked in earlier lectures about a couple different types of energy. One is called potential energy. Potential energy is stored energy that can later be used to do work. Okay, the example I gave back then was if I'm holding up a marker and if I let go of it, it's going to fall towards the earth. Okay, so as I'm holding it up here, it's storing energy, and that energy can be used for the marker to fall towards the earth. So since it's storing energy, it has stored energy, which is called potential energy. Now, the most common way that we'll refer to potential energy in a biology course is chemical energy. So it turns out that there's energy stored in chemical bonds. Okay, so since it's stored energy, that's a type of potential energy. And that explains why you eat. you don't just eat because it tastes good. You eat because you need energy. Your cells need energy for everything they do. Moving muscles requires energy. Thinking requires energy. Building proteins requires energy. Your cell needs energy. Where does it get it from? The food you eat. Well, that food you eat is built out of chemicals, things like fat and carbohydrates and protein. Those chemicals are storing energy, so they have chemical energy or potential energy. Another type of energy is called kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. Anytime something is moving, it has kinetic energy. Most common way we'll refer to that in a biology course is heat or temperature. Because remember I taught you in an earlier lecture what temperature actually is, not just I feel hot or I feel cold, is measuring how fast our molecule is moving. So since it's movement, that's kinetic energy, because kinetic energy is movement, including atoms moving. All right, now the other thing to know about energy that we haven't discussed yet is that energy can very easily be converted from one type of energy to another type of energy. For example, if I hold this marker up here, right now it has potential energy. But if I let go of it, it converts that potential energy into kinetic energy, the energy of motion. Okay, because it converts the stored energy into the energy for the marker to fall. So I can easily convert potential to kinetic. I can also go the other direction. If the marker's down here, it has less energy than if it were up here, because down here it's closer to the ground, and it doesn't have as great a distance to fall. Up here it's farther from the ground, it has a greater distance to fall. Okay, so I can give it more potential energy. Up here I have more potential energy. How to do that? I use kinetic energy, the energy of motion, to raise it up to give it more potential energy. So you can easily go from potential to kinetic or kinetic to potential. Or electrical energy to light energy. That's what's happening in the light bulbs around you right now. So energy can very easily change forms. Now, when we're talking about energy, there's two types of systems you could use to study energy. That's called a closed or isolated system or an open system. Okay, a closed or an isolated system is a system that does not exchange energy with the environment outside of that system. An example for that, although honestly it's not a very good example, I'll explain why in a second, but an example for that would be a thermos. If you pour hot coffee in a thermos, the coffee stays hot. Why? Because it cannot easily exchange that heat energy with the environment outside of the thermos. Now the reason that that's not actually a very good example is because if a thermos was actually truly a closed or isolated system, the coffee would stay hot forever. It would never get cold. Okay, so that's what an isolated system is. It cannot exchange energy with its environment. The other type of system is called an open system. An open system is a system that does exchange energy with its environment. An example of that would be if I were to pour coffee in a coffee cup. Okay, if I pour coffee in this coffee cup, then it cools down much more quickly than if I put it in a thermos. Why? Because the coffee in the coffee cup, the heat can very easily exchange energy with the air around the coffee, so it's an open system. So open systems do exchange energy with their environment. So why am I telling you this? Because this is not a physics course, this is a biology course. Well, because we're talking about energy, and we're studying biology, the study of living things. Well, it turns out all living things are open systems. They are not closed systems. You are an open system. Why? Because you're constantly taking energy and adding it to your system. You keep eating. Every time you eat, what you're doing is you're adding energy to your system. So you're an open system, you're not a closed system. So the study of energy transformations is known as thermodynamics. And with thermodynamics, there's a couple of laws that go along with it. The first law of thermodynamics states that the energy of the universe is constant. In other words, the amount of energy does not change. We have the same amount of energy right now as the universe has always had and as the universe will always have. Okay, so the energy of the universe is constant. Another way of saying this is energy can never be created or destroyed. You can't create energy and you cannot destroy energy. Now, when people first hear that, they're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because we make energy all the time. We have power plants that make energy. Okay, well, it turns out power plants don't make energy. Why? Because it's impossible to create energy. What does a power plant do? It changes the form of energy. And I already told you, you can very easily change the form of energy from one type to a different type. So most power plants in the United States are still powered by burning fossil fuels, like coal, for example. So coal, that fossil fuel, is a form of chemical energy. There's energy stored in the chemical bonds of coal, that fossil fuel. What do? They burn the fossil fuel to release its energy, and that energy in the end is converted into electrical energy. So they're not creating energy at a power plant, they're simply changing it from one type of energy to a different type of energy. So, since energy cannot be created or destroyed, that means that we have the same amount of energy now as in our universe as we always have had and always will have. So this is also known as the law of conservation of energy. Energy is conserved. In figure form, before some chemical reaction, the total amount of energy you have before that chemical reaction is exactly equal to the total amount of energy after that chemical reaction. Okay, now it's going to change form, but you have the same total amount. That's the first law of thermodynamics. Second law of thermodynamics is every single time you have an energy transformation, some of that energy becomes unusable energy lost to the environment as heat. Now, when you first hear that, it sounds like I just lied to you with the first law, because in the first law I said you can never destroy energy. Now I'm saying every single time you use energy, some of it becomes lost. Okay, well, being lost and being destroyed are not the same thing. What I mean by loss is the energy is now unusable energy. You cannot use it to do any work. An example, let's say you go drive your car, okay? When you're driving your car, what you're doing is you're doing an energy transformation. You're converting chemical energy, gasoline, there's lots of energy stored in that molecule of gasoline, into kinetic energy, the energy of motion, to move your car wherever you're going. But let's say you drive your car, you get out of your car and you go and you touch your engine. Don't touch your engine, it's really hot. Okay, but if you were to touch your engine, don't do it. If you were to touch your engine, it'd be very hot. Okay, that heat did not help your car to move. Okay, all that heat is doing is it's causing the air around your car to heat up a little bit. Remember, what heat means is the molecules move faster. So what's happening is you're causing the air around your car, the air molecules, instead of moving fast, to move a little bit faster. Okay, that doesn't help your car to move. So that energy is now unusable energy. It's not used to do any work. Okay, it's lost to the environment as heat. Okay, so that's kind of an extreme example, driving your car somewhere. You can easily see your car engine gets very hot. But it turns out every single time you do an energy transformation, some of that energy becomes unusable energy lost to the environment as heat. Now, the other way of stating the second law of thermodynamics is every time there's an energy transformation, it increases the entropy of the universe. Okay, entropy is a term that sometimes sounds confusing to people. All entropy means is disorder. Okay, so if you have high entropy, you have high disorder. If you have low entropy, you have low disorder. Okay, an example. Let's say I have a castle that I built out of Legos. I have a Lego castle. Okay, well, that Lego castle has a lot of order and structure to it, a lot of organization. I take that Lego castle, I break it apart into Lego pieces, and I just randomly throw the Lego pieces across the floor. Okay, as those Legos are randomly thrown across the floor, okay, that would be high disorder. It's unorganized. So the Lego castle, compared to the Lego pieces just randomly thrown across the floor, the Lego pieces thrown across the floor would be high entropy, high disorder. The Lego castle would be low entropy, low disorder. So every time you have an energy transformation, you increase entropy. Why? Because you're taking very organized energy, like back to your car. Gasoline, that molecule is a very exact shape. It has a lot of structure and order to it, like a Lego castle. Take that energy in the gasoline and you convert it into heat energy. Well, heat is very disorganized energy. All it means is the air around your car is moving a little bit faster, but it's random which way it's moving. Okay, so it's very disorganized energy. It's like the Legos thrown across the floor. Okay, so every single time you have an energy transformation, you increase the entropy or disorder of the universe. That's the other way we phrase the second law of thermodynamics. Or, in figure form, when you do some chemical reaction, no matter what the chemical reaction is, no matter what the energy transformation is, some of that energy becomes unusable energy. Okay, it can no longer be used to do any work, lost as heat to the environment. Now, if you put those two laws together and think through it, What this means is, since energy can never be created or destroyed, we have a set amount of energy in the universe. We have some amount of energy in the universe. Now, energy is being used to do things. Every single time that energy is used to do something, some of that energy becomes unusable energy, lost in the environment as heat. Can't be used to do any work. So you only have this much usable energy left in the universe. Well, you're going to use that energy to do something, some of that's going to become unusable. You have this much usable energy left, use that, some becomes unusable. This much usable energy left, use that, it becomes unusable. So what this means is, all of our energy in our universe is going to a state of unusable energy, at which point no more work can be done. Okay, and there's a term for this in physics. This is called the heat death of the universe. So the universe is dying, and how it's dying is all of its energy is being turned into heat, at which point no more work can ever be done. Now, although the universe is dying, you don't personally need to worry about this because you'll be long dead before the universe dies. Sorry to break it to you. We're talking about trillions and trillions of years from now. Okay, so those are the laws of thermodynamics. Obviously, for much greater detail, take a physics course, but that's what we're going to learn about thermodynamics for biology. To make sure it made sense, one more time, I'm going to explain it more in terms of biology. First law of thermodynamics: energy is never created or destroyed, it just changes forms. There's energy in the fish, the bear eats the fish, that energy is now inside the bear. The energy wasn't destroyed, it just changed from one form of energy to another form of energy. Second law of thermodynamics: every single time you have an energy transformation, every single time you use energy, some of the energy is lost in the environment as heat. So this bear wants to use the energy from the fish it ate to power a run. Okay, so the bear wants to go for a run. Okay, it needs energy to do that. Well, just like if you go for a run, what's going to happen is you're going to start heating up, you're going to get hot. That heat is not helping this bear to run. All that heat is doing is it's causing the air around the bear to heat up a little bit. Notice the air molecules are moving a little bit faster, but they're moving randomly which way they're moving. That doesn't help the bear to run. So that heat is now lost to the environment. So it becomes unusable energy. Okay, so those are the first and second laws of thermodynamics, more in biology terms. Living things will unavoidably always convert organized forms of energy into heat. You're taking organized energy, the food you eat, those molecules we learned about in an earlier lecture, like proteins, carbohydrates, fat molecules, they are very organized. They have an exact structure to them. Where you're taking that organized energy and you're converting it into heat, which is very disorganized energy. So living things convert organized energy into disorganized energy. Now, when you learn these laws of thermodynamics, at first they don't make a lot of sense. It seems like they can't possibly be true. Because what I'm telling you is everything in the universe is trying to become disordered. It's trying to have high entropy. Everything is trying to go to a state of unorganized disorder. If that's the case, then it doesn't make sense, because if you look around your world, there's a lot of order and structure to the world you live in. There's a lot of order and structure to you. You have a lot of organization, structure to your form of your body, to your form of your cells. Well, it turns out the only reason you can have all of that order and structure is because you're constantly adding energy to your system to maintain that order and structure. You keep eating. When you eat, you're adding energy to your system to maintain the order and structure. Okay, get a little bit morbid for a second. Let's say you stop eating. What's going to happen? You're going to die, and then you're going to decompose. You're going to lose your order and structure. Okay, so even though it seems like there's a lot of organization around us and in us, the reason is because we're constantly spending energy to maintain that order and structure. Now, if we look at our entire planet, our ecosystem, energy enters as a form of light and exits as a form of heat. So to explain that one, all living things on this planet need plants. Plants are our original source of food. You're either a plant where you're directly taking sunlight energy and using that sunlight energy to make glucose, which is sugar, which is food, or you're an animal that eats a plant that uses sunlight energy to make food, or you're an animal that eats an animal that ate a plant that uses sunlight energy to make food. So the original source of food for all living things is plants. Plants get the energy from sunlight. Then all living things use the energy and food to do work, and when they do work, they generate heat. Okay, so energy enters as a form of light and exits as a form of heat in our ecosystem or our planet. happens. Now, some chemical reactions can happen spontaneously. They can happen all on their own without you needing to constantly give them energy to make them happen. But for it to be a spontaneous process, for it to happen all on its own, for it not to constantly need energy to keep happening, it must at the same time increase the entropy of the universe. So spontaneous processes increase the entropy of the universe. Now, this concept will make a lot more sense in our next video in this lecture series, where we will talk specifically about how energy is directly involved in chemical reactions. So until then, this has been Dr. Sage.